Hi everybody! Welcome to another Storytime with Sid. It is me, Sidney of Hightower, as it is every week, and here we are again with another story. We're delving more into the fairy stories this time in this amazing book of Irish and fairy folktales, and today we are reading Frank Martin and the Fairies. So let's get started. Martin was a thin, pale man when I saw him, of a sickly look and a constitution naturally feeble. His hair was a light auburn, his beard mostly unshaven, and his hands of a singular delicacy and whiteness, owing, I dare say, as much to the soft and easy nature of his employment as to his infirm health. In everything else he was as sensible, sober, and rational as any other man. But on the topic of fairies, the man's mania was peculiarly strong and immovable. Indeed, I remember that the expression of his eyes was singularly wild and hollow, and his long, narrow temples sallow and emaciated. Now, this man did not lead an unhappy life, nor did he malady he labored under seem to be productive of either pain or terror to him, although one might be apt to imagine otherwise. On the contrary, he and the fairies maintained the most friendly intimacy, and their dialogues, which I fear are woefully one-sided ones, must have been a source of great pleasure for him, for they were conducted with much mirth and laughter on his part at least. "Well, Frank, when did you see the fairies?" "Whist! There's 24 of them in the shop," the weaving shop, "this minute. There's a little old fellow sitting on the top of the sleighs and all to be rocked while I'm weaving. The sorrow's in 'em, but they're the greatest little scammers alive, so they are. See, there's another one of them in my dressing noggin, a species of sizey flummery which is brushed into the yarn to be kept the thread round and even. Go out of that, you shinguan, or bad cess to me if you don't, but I'll leave you a mark, ha? Cut, you thief, you!" "Frank, aren't you afraid of them?" "Is it me? What would I be afraid of them for? Sure they have no power over me." "And why haven't they, Frank?" "Because I was baptized against them." "What do you mean by that?" "Why, the priest that christened me was told by my father to put in the proper prayer against the fairies, and a priest can't refuse it when he's asked, and he did so. Begorra, it's well for me that he did. Let the tallow alone, you glutton, see, there's a weeny thief of them atin' my tallow. Because, you see, it was their intention to make me the king of fairies." "Is it possible?" "Devil a lie in it, sure, you may ax 'em and they'll tell you." "What size are they, Frank?" "Oh, little wee fellows with green coats and the purtiest little shoes ever you seen. There's 2 of 'em, both old acquaintances of mine, running on the yong beam. That old fellow with the bob wig is called Jim Jam, and the other chap with the 3-cocked hat is called Nicky Nick. Nicky plays the pipes. Nicky, give us a tune or I'll malavogue you. Come on. Laugher shore, whilst now I listen." The poor fellow, though, weaving as fast as he could all the time, yet bestowed every possible mark of attention to the music and seemed to enjoy it as much as if it had been real. But who can tell whether that which we look upon as privation may not, after all, be a fountain of increased happiness, greater, perhaps, than any which we ourselves enjoy? I forget who the poet who says, "Mysterious are thy laws, the vision's finer than the view. Her landscape nature never drew, so fair as fancy draws." Many a time when a mere child, not more than 6 or 7 years of age, have I gone as far as Frank's weaving shop in order, with a heart divided between curiosity and fear, to listen to his conversation with the good people. From morning till night his tongue was going almost as incessantly as his shuttle, and it was well known that at night, whenever he awoke out of his sleep, the first thing he did was to put out his hand and push them, as it were, off his bed. "Go out of this, you thieves, go out and out of this now, and let me alone. Nicky, is this any time to be playing the pipes when me wants to sleep? Go off now, troth yez do. You'll see what I'll give yez tomorrow. Sure, I'll be making new dressings, and if yez behave decently, maybe I'll leave yez a scraping of the pot. There now, och, poor things, they're decent creatures. Sure, they're all gone, barrin' poor Redcap that doesn't like to leave me." And then the harmless monomaniac would fall back into what we trust would be an innocent slumber. About this time, there is said to have occurred a very remarkable circumstance which gave poor Frank a vast deal of importance among the neighbors. A man named Frank Thomas, the same in whose Mickey Morey held the first dance at which I ever saw him, as detailed in a former sketch. This man, I say, had a child sick, but of what complaint I cannot now remember, nor is of any importance. One of the gables of Thomas's house was built against, or rather into, a fort or rath, called Towney, or properly Tonach Forth. It was said to be haunted by the fairies, and what gave it a character peculiarly wild in my eyes was that there was on the southern side of it 2 or 3 little green mounds, which were said to be graves of unchristened children, over which it was considered dangerous and unlucky to pass. At all events, the season was midsummer, and one evening about dusk, during the illness of the child, the noise of a hand-saw was heard upon the Forth. This was considered rather strange, and after a little time, a few of those who were assembled at Frank Thomas's went out to see who it could be at that was sawing in such a place, or what they could be sawing at so late an hour, for everyone knew that nobody in the whole country about them would dare to cut down the few white thorns that grew upon the Forth. On going to examine, however, judge of their surprise when, after surrounding and searching the whole place, they could discover no trace of either saw nor sawer. In fact, with the exception of themselves, there was no one, either natural or supernatural, visible. They then returned to the house, and had scarcely sat down when it was heard again, within 10 yards of them. Another examination of the premises took place, but with equal success. Now, however, while standing on the Forth, they heard the sawing in a little hollow, about 150 yards below them, which was completely exposed to their view, but they could see nobody. A party of them immediately went down to ascertain, if possible, what this singular noise and visible labor could mean. But on arriving at the spot, they heard the sawing, to which were now added hammering, and the driving of nails upon the Forth above, whilst those who stood on the Forth continued to hear it in the hollow. On comparing notes, they resolved to send down Billy Nelson's for Frank Martin, a distance of only about 80 or 90 yards. He was soon on the spot, and without a moment's hesitation solved the enigma. "'Tis the fairies," said he. "I think them busy carthers they are." "But what are they sawing, Frank?" "They're making a child's coffin," he replied. "They have the body already made, and they're now nailing the lid together." That night the child died, and the story goes that on the second evening afterwards, the carpenter who was called upon to make the coffin brought a table out from Thomas's house to the Forth, as a temporary bench. And it is said the sawing and hammering necessary for the completion of his task were precisely the same which had been heard the evening but one before, neither more nor less. I remember the death of the child myself, and the making of its coffin, but I think the story of the supernatural carpenter was not heard in the village for some months after its interment. Frank had every appearance of a hypochondriac about him. At the time I saw him, he might be about 30 or 40 years of age, but I do not think, from the debility of his frame and infirm health, that he has been alive for several years. He was an object of considerable interest and curiosity, and often have I been present when he was pointed out to strangers as the man who could see the good people. And that was Frank Martin and the Fairies. You know, this story brought up some very interesting things. Someone who can see fairies is, at least back in that time, at least was respected enough. I think nowadays, in modern culture, if anyone were to see fairies and talk to fairies, well, most people would think that they were mentally ill and would probably send them away to a place where they could get treated for seeing fairies or seeing hallucinations. Now, I am not one to say that this man was either in his right mind or not. However, there is something naturally very interesting about someone who can see the unseen. Because I do believe that there are certain human beings that can see certain things that other human beings just either haven't opened their mind up to or do not have the power to possess that kind of sight. I think it is a very rare thing for human beings to have that, especially in a society where it is seen to be bad for being different. And when you see things like that, they're often pushed to the side or ignored because it means you're different, and it means you're othered, and it means you're a little bit strange, and that can be a very dangerous thing for a human to be. It can be very dangerous for a human to be a little bit strange. But that's why you have to find like-minded people and open-minded people. People who will care about you no matter what. And they brought up another very interesting thing. They brought up unmarked graves of children. Now, in traditional Celtic Irish lore, that's a very dangerous thing. It is said to be, I was literally talking to my friend about this, I think yesterday, where an unmarked grave of a child can be thought to bring about supernatural or fae or things of that nature, because they were not properly marked, and it can cause sometimes madness, sometimes bad things happening upon the family, but in this case it just seems that the fairies really just wanted to take care of the child, and that is a very, very interesting concept to me. So let me know what you think down in the comments. I guess that's a thing that people say now. But thank you so much for joining me for another story. I really enjoy this book, and I am so excited to read more about what human beings in Irish culture think about fae and fairies and the other supernatural in their realm. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and safe, and I'll see you next week.